My pleasure today to introduce the panel that you're going to hear from, all who are integral in the main parts of this film. Co-writer and director Ty Roberts. Ty? Actor Luke Wilson. Luke plays for those who haven't seen it, Coach Rusty Russell, the World War I veteran, who has a bit of a history with orphans, and it drives him in the movie. And actress Vinessa Shaw. And Vinessa plays Luke's wife, who is a champion for orphans and all underprivileged children for a better education for all of us. What a great crew we have today. So let's take a seat and let's get to the movies. Well, you know, I don't know about y'all, but we need to give them a big howdy. Howdy. Welcome to Cowtown. We're thrilled you're here. But let's get to the movie. I don't know, I love movies and I love books. And I always say movies and books are like dreaming with your eyes wide open because they take you places that you can't go. And I'm a sentimental slob, for those of you who don't know me, they probably do. So I love movies that make you feel good. And 12 Mighty Orphans makes you feel incredibly good. Y'all did a beautiful job on it, and I just was so pleased that we got to do it here in Cowtown. So Ty, we'll start a little bit with you. Tell me a little bit about how this project came to be and how this beloved book got turned into a movie.
Well, fortunately, my partner and good friend and producer, Houston Hill, had actually read the book back in 2008. And he approached Jim Dent, the author, and I believe they had just optioned the book to another group out of Dallas, Matt Barr and Mike Barr and Ryan Ross. And they had then in turn optioned the book to another group who tried to develop for many, many years, and it sort of went stagnant for some reason. But Houston came to me and he said, "What do you think about a football movie?" And I actually was kind of scared about it because, you know, sometimes these football films and sports films in general, they hit these tropes that are just so constant through all the films, and it's hard to break away from that, you know, just that cliched sort of storyline. But when I picked up that book and read about Rusty, I was like, man, this is really something totally unique and fresh, and I believe that there were much deeper dramatic storylines to Rusty's background, and all the orphans had these very traumatic and dramatic, you know, lives, and I just felt there was a unique story there. And so I fell in love with it immediately, and thank goodness, you know, our other partner, Greg McCabe, we mentioned to him, and he was like, "Oh, that's my second favorite book," you know, and it was like, God, we got to try to do this. And almost immediately, the groundswell started. Lane Garrison and I started writing. We connected with Brent and Brian, who connected us to George Young, and we were off to the races. It was amazingly fast for how an independent film typically comes together. So it was just meant to be. So
it was, and it was meant to be here. And speaking of having it here, you didn't start out looking at Fort Worth. Well, he got here at the right time. So where else were you looking, and why did you land on Fort Worth?
We started looking in Fort Worth, but got lured briefly away to Oklahoma because they have a 30% tax break, and we thought, you know, state of Texas was like 22.5%, and we were like, oh my goodness, that's 7.5%. It's a lot of money when you're talking about a film budget, but ultimately we just couldn't leave Fort Worth. And that Pythian Home where we filmed, and this is the honest to goodness truth, we looked all over Oklahoma for a location where we could duplicate the Masonic Home. It's still here in Fort Worth, as many of you know, but it has been totally redone. And it's sort of surrounded by Walmarts and the city, and it was just not a viable, especially on the interior, it wasn't a viable location. But the Pythian Home in Weatherford was like stepping back in time. And it's such a unique and beautiful building. I mean, that, and then Jessica and everybody who was vying for us to do it here, it was a no-brainer at a certain point. And that 7%, we made it 10 times over with everybody supporting the film in every other way.
And
So.
we are delighted about that. So Luke, you're from that big city to the east that we don't always talk about. We love our friends in Dallas, but we have to remind them that DFW stands for Destination Fort Worth. Tell us a little bit about Rusty Russell and the character that you played. And after he left the orphanage, he went to SMU and coached, correct?
Yeah, I learned about Rusty first through the script, and then somehow I'd missed the book. And but then when I signed on to do the movie, I found out that it was a bestseller, and a lot of my friends had read it, and friends of my parents so learned about Rusty and what an incredible guy he was. And one of the most helpful ways I learned about Coach Russell was through Russ Morton, his grandson, who was on set a lot, and we had lunch together a lot, and it was just nice to talk to him, and that really helped inform the work that I was trying to do. But just an incredible guy, and I think he really kind of defines they don't make them like that anymore, having been an orphan himself and then gone to World War II and experienced hardships there, and then come here and left Temple, Texas, to come here and take over the orphanage, not knowing what was ahead for him and his wife Juanita and their family. So he really did take a chance, and it is a great story. But I always would have to remind myself that he didn't know what was going to happen. So that makes him to me such an incredible person. And I came on the movie because Ty and I had worked together here in Texas on a couple of different movies and talked about working together on something. We'd just gotten along and had kind of similar tastes. And then when he had the script, he sent it along to me, and I was lucky enough that he hired me on. And here I am talking to you in Destination Fort Worth.
It'll stick with you, right? My friends in Dallas don't always love it when I say that. But they've gotten used to it. So, Vinessa, you had the wife. You played Rusty's wife, and beautifully done. Talk to us a little bit about how you developed that character and what she meant to you and what she'll mean to the audiences as they see her, for those who haven't seen the film yet or potentially read the book, because it's a beautiful character.
It is a beautiful character and so well written, and true to who Juanita was. Developing the character, I didn't have much time to develop the character. I came in flying by the seat of my pants as the last piece of the puzzle coming into the show. But I immediately resonated with who she was. She had grit and spunk and had humor. She reminded me a lot of my grandmother, who survived, obviously, the pandemic. It's so off of our tongue, but, the Depression, and, was basically on the streets with her sister, having to, find 10 cents to go see a movie. So, and that's where they stayed because her parents were nowhere to be found. Her and her sister would watch movies for 10 cents over and over again, and get a couple of ice creams maybe. But that's how they spent their time in Northern California, in San Francisco. So it just, the kind of stories, the way she spoke, even though I'm not from the South, I just felt a familiarity with her. And, basically it took to her. And I just enjoyed her courage and her strength and her ability to be direct and honest with Rusty about what they should do for these orphans. It wasn't easy, obviously, to live during that time, and she took on more than they could chew, but in the end, they believed they could do it, and that was the strength of their relationship and their love and their determination to do the right thing. So I think that's something that I believe in my own life. I believe about helping the youth, the next generation. I was raised to do that, and so it was, in a way, easy to play her, and also I had no time to develop what she was, but those things came to me immediately, and so I was able to jump in right away.
She did have great grit and tenacity, but she also had a daughter, and you had your work cut out managing the daughter and the relationship with Rusty and all, and it was beautifully done.
Yes. We had these beautiful twins. Are they here today? They're here, but they'll be here tonight. They were so cute and amazing. They're just, this is their first movie, and they were wide-eyed all about it. So we had to teach them the ropes, but talk about spunk. They were so cute. Talk about spunk, yeah. So they fit into our family well.
Vinessa was very helpful in that they'd be switching the two little girls out playing the one daughter, and there was one scene where we were driving along in an old pickup, and I was just trying to keep the pickup up and running and not flood the engine and shut down shooting, and the little girl was in the back just kind of asking different questions like, what's a microphone, what's a camera, and I was getting kind of flustered, but Vinessa was like a real mom, and she kind of took over and it enabled me to be able to just handle my task.
That's a good thing, to have somebody to help wrangle the kids, for sure.
Yeah, tell them stories, make up jokes. She had a lot of jokes of her generation, of course, but interesting jokes. That was the way to keep her busy.
So, Ty, this story is a story that touched a lot of people. And if you're from Texas, or specifically from Fort Worth, and your parents were, you know this story, and you know the people that he touched. So what conversations did you have going into this with former Mighty Mites or people that had lived at the Masonic Home?
Well, it was, I got to say, Russ Morton was like our source and really was a consultant for us on every level, having had firsthand experience with Rusty and Juanita. And he was just a wealth of information. We were able to meet a few others, but unfortunately that generation, there weren't a lot left. But we did get to see, the bars had done some documentary film work on doing interviews with some of the Mites back in the day. And, the one thing I kind of took away from it, and it really changed our sort of perspective on the film, was, Rusty and Juanita came in and they transformed just the whole feeling of the orphanage and instilled a safety net to the kids and guidance in their education and motivation through football. And it was a place of safety and love for these kids during a time when nobody knew, what the future would hold. And I just thought that was so powerful. Rusty came from Temple, Texas, from a top-rated program to the orphanage to start kind of anew. And that, to me, said so much about him as a man and Juanita to support that. And it was a selfless act that, lasted many, many seasons and years. And I thought that represented humanity in such a wonderful way. And I feel like that's important to show, nowadays. And Lord knows we didn't know that a pandemic would happen in between, but what a timely and parallel story to be able to share with the world right now, and I hope it resonates with everybody, because I think everybody could use a little uplift and kick right now to get life back to normal again. So
For sure they could. They need some feel-goods.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
So Vinessa, what was the most challenging that you had to deal with as you were filming this?
I think, not to belabor the subject, but I think it was just coming into it cold. The first scene I had to do was a huge, long monologue about my frustrations with the home and how they were treating the children. And thankfully, Ty helped me out, and Luke as well, and they just disarmed me with their humor. And Ty gave me a couple of, notes on my accent, of course, because I've never done a Texan accent. Anyway, it was a lot. So that was the most difficult thing to do. Everything else was a breeze, making sure that, I was encouraging the young women of the orphanage, like having that kind of motherly quality. So, having played this woman who's ahead of her time, I feel like, in so many ways, giving these women dignity and making them more than just the woman of the house, which we know that's hard enough as it is, but turning their frowns into smiles, and all of that was a lot easier than just the technical parts of coming in cold as an actor. But after that, it was a breeze, and thanks to you guys.
Luke, what would you say was the most challenging? Or maybe the most fun, or both?
Well, I really did just have a lot of fun on the movie. I mean, it was challenging to kind of, I kept thinking about the math teachers I had and the coaches I had singing me up there playing a math teacher and a coach. So I had to just kind of put that out of my mind. Yeah, I just really loved being around the boys and Martin Sheen. I mean, we had so much fun together, and it was, perfect time of year. It was October, and it was outside, and they were just such a great group of kids. I mean, I always think about the first week when they were supposed to be shoeless as players, and we were kind of out in the dirt and grass there at the Pythian Home, and I knew there were those little cockleburs, little burrs. And so these guys were having to walk around, and they were kind of all walking like this. And so I said, now look, you guys are supposed to be Depression era tough kids. You can't be walking around like, a little cat on a hot tin roof. And this was the first week, so they were kind of like, oh, yes, sir, oh, okay, yeah. And they were calling me coach and sir, and I loved that. And then the second week rolls around, they were still doing it. I was like, guys, really, you gotta be tougher. You can't be hot-footing it around out there on the dirt. And then you'd hear a couple of guys mutter, like, he doesn't know there's these damn stickers out here. And then we all got to be friends. But I really just had so much fun being around them and being here in Fort Worth. It was just great to shoot here because, like you were saying, Ty, that you can get used to shooting in other locations. Like I'm working right now in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's supposed to be Nebraska. So you're not always lucky enough to shoot where a story takes place. And when a story is this important and to the town and to the story, it's so great to have been here. And just wanted to mention George Young because we couldn't have done any of this without George. He was just such a great collaborator and partner and a friend of ours. So yeah, we couldn't have done it without him and the town and you and the Fort Worth Film Commission. So thank you.
Well, you mentioned October, and I had the pleasure of being on the set with them in October, late October at Farrington Field, and it was not classic October. It was 38 degrees the day we were there, and these young men were running around in very thin uniforms, and you didn't have a coat on either. Right. So it was really fun. What was your most fun thing? It was cold.
I think the most fun day was the day when we were dancing in the living room. So sweet. Such a sweet moment, and really important, I think, that kind of levity amongst all the hardships. There's so many, though. Really, it's amazing to work on a film where you have so many good memories, the people involved, everyone was perfectly cast, I feel like. It just came together magically that way, and so you just felt like everything was a breeze after, coming in cold. Yeah, so I had the great time. But that was my favorite, I think. Just that small moment, I think.
That's a beautiful scene in the movie. Wait till you see it. So, your mom, Luke, was on scene taking pictures. What's it like having your mother on the scene, on the set, taking pictures?
Well, I feel like she's really trying to steal our thunder with this exhibition she had last night at the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. I mean, people ask me, am I competitive with my brothers? Little do they know I've got this mother that I'm in a competition with. No, but it was great to have her on set. And, she was like me. She just loved being around the boys and being on the set and seeing all the great crew people at work. And, yeah, it's since our first movie we ever made back in Dallas, Bottle Rocket, she's been on a lot of different sets of different movies that Wes Anderson and my brothers and I have made. So I just always love those behind the scenes photos, and I'm glad somebody's been taking such great pictures over the years, and I'm glad that she's here today.
And Luke's mother, Laura Wilson, is here, and she has a beautiful exhibit of the photos that are shot on scene during the filming at the Cowgirl Museum. And Luke's mother also is a fairly new inductee to the Cowgirl Hall of Fame. It's delighted to have you. So Ty, before we take questions from the audience,
Yes.
we want you to come back to Fort Worth. Will you film here again? I'll put you on the spot.
In a Fort Worth minute, I will film here again. We actually have a couple of projects that could be very fitting for the area, so keep your fingers crossed for us. We've even been pitching the 12 Mighty Orphans television series, so we've roped them into it. They're now on the hook to be in it, so. But it would be great. We'd love it. No other city I've ever filmed in has given us this type of support, so you've done well.
We loved having you, and we loved to be able to support you. What'd you do for fun while you were here?
What did I do
Besides
for fun?
drinking tequila.
No. Besides break down my script and try to figure out how to shoot the movie. We just ate well. I'll tell you that. We had some wonderful steaks while we were here. Hit every steakhouse you could ever imagine. So.
Yeah, did you? What did y'all do?
They probably had a lot more fun.
Oh no, I had my 1 year and 1.5-year-old with me. We went to the Science Museum. That was amazing for him twice. He enjoyed it. And he went to the stockyards without me, which I was bummed, but at least he got to see. And then we were here for Halloween, and he enjoyed going out. It was the first time he'd ever seen, costumes and all of that. So he was just excited to see that. So he experienced more Fort Worth than I did. But I'd love to come back and enjoy it more, and I'm enjoying it this time around. So
We'll come back. We'll entertain you. What did you do, Luke, since you live just to the east of us?
Right. Well, I did come here a lot as a kid, just with our family. We'd come here, and I'd come here to play sports. And so this time around, really just did the same thing these guys did. We were pretty busy, but in our off time, it was nice just to walk around downtown, was living down there. Then went to Joe T's quite a bit, to where I thought they were getting something wrong when they were doing my wardrobe at night, because it was getting tighter and tighter. And then I was going to Joe T's 3 times, 4 times a week wasn't really helping. So I would get out there and jog along the river, so that would help.
It's a beautiful place to jog, and if you're going to enjoy Joe T's, you better get a little walking or jogging in for sure, because it's great. So I think we're going to take a few questions from the audience, and somebody has, there we go, microphones back here. If you've got a question, raise your hands. George?
I'll talk loud. All right, Vinessa, since you brought it up, can the man dance? I gotta know. Can Luke dance?
I think he can. I think he's a little shy at first, right? Just a little bit.
Not a good dancer. But just have to remind myself they can fix this all in post-production.
We made it work.
Let me just say this. They made it work really well. And apparently Rusty Russell was a wonderful dancer, and they danced a lot. True, Russ Morton? That's right. So thanks for living up to it, Luke.
Well, you looked like you were a fabulous dancer in the scene.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, for future reference, what do you look for in a city that facilitates you selecting it as a location? Not just nice people saying nice things to you, but really, what's the groundbreaker here?
Well, it is the physical location. When you're trying to recreate 1938 Texas, honestly, going over and looking between like Dallas and Fort Worth, there's a much different preservation of buildings, the density of the downtown. The Pythian Home was a big, sealed the deal for us on many levels, because it was picture ready. And when you're looking to recreate 3/4 of your story, in one location that needs to be 1938, you start to break down the numbers to see, okay, what do we have to do to this location to make it feel of the era? And it becomes an accounting problem. And you have to be able to find places that are almost picture ready or need as minimal dressing as possible, and the professionals around to make that happen as well. It all comes down to numbers, really. I mean, for me as a director, it's all visual and being embraced by the folks of the town or whatever, but it also has to do with breaking down a budget and how far do we have to travel and how much do we have to do to make it work.
And that is one of the most kind of interesting parts of making movies, is doing these location scouts where you just kind of get in a van and based on what's in the script, you're just kind of looking for different locations that'll fit the movie, and then also it does factor in where is everybody going to stay that's in the cast and crew. But yeah, that's just another reason Fort Worth wound up being perfect in so many ways.
Absolutely, and Fort Worth is big enough, but it's not too big, which is so great. The traffic isn't terrible. The one tough thing that we had to recreate was the football stadiums, because every high school football program worth their weight, they've got turf and a brand new field, and so all these old what were they, WPC stadiums from back in the era, they're virtually non-existent. We found one down in Cleburne that had one side, and we utilized it for a brief moment, but the football stadiums were quite interesting. They were tough to find. So we went down to the park.
Farrington Field?
No, it was the park. Gateway Park.
Gateway Park, yeah.
And we built a modular sort of stadium, and then you'll see in the movie a lot of it is enhanced digitally, but you won't hopefully notice.
They did use some of the locker rooms in Farrington Field, though.
We used locker rooms at Farrington Field. We used a press, a scene where they're doing a bunch of press.
In this building here.
Oh, this building was amazing for the UIL hearings and the exterior of those hearings. And we also used the men's room here. It was quite roomy. Oh, press box right up here where Rooster Mcconaughey, who plays Pop Boone, and Eamon Carter, played by Treat Williams, were up in their press box talking about the Amarillo game, and we shot it right here with the green screen, right where y'all are seated. So we utilized everything we could, as close together as we could, and it was pretty amazing what we pulled off. Everything was within the right sort of range, and we literally walked from here to. Did we ever go across? No, we were going to shoot right across the street. You try to keep everything as close together as you can to keep movement as quick as possible. The women's home or women's club, right?
The Women's Club.
The Women's Club, 3 different locations. What an amazing building. It doubled as the White House.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
Really beautiful.
Other questions?
Since I've got the mic, hi. 2 questions. Mcconaughey is not a common name, so is there a relationship between Matthew and Rooster? First question. Second question, where is the Pythian Home?
The Pythian Home is in Weatherford, Texas, and it is, if you're driving down, I guess that's 20? Yeah, 20. It's just on the right side. You can see it up on the hill, and it just looks like this majestic, beautiful old castle. And Weatherford, Texas. Oh yeah, and Weatherford also embraced this film in such a wonderful way, and Lisa and her team at the Pythian just opened their doors clearly and above and beyond what we ever expected. So really amazing. Is Rooster related to Matthew McConaughey? He may be a second or third cousin, I think. No, he's the older brother of Matthew, yeah. And he's about as big a character as I've ever come across. I don't know about y'all.
He's unbelievable. He was great in the movie, but I realized that this guy is just by who he is, he's a real scene stealer. So I had to revert to doing things like while he was talking, doing his dialogue, I'd eat an apple, which is just So I was having to do stuff like that to just try and keep up with him.
Just a wonderful, high-spirited collaborator that I've had in 2 movies now, and I'll try to keep him in them as they come. He's just a good guy from Midland, Texas.
Good Texas guy.
Yeah.
I think we have another one here.
Well, I was just wondering, before the movie was shot, had you had any experiences with the Masons?
With the Masons?
Yes, sir.
You know, my grandfather was a Mason. He was from Odessa and lived in Midland for many years, but I was such a youngster. I remember them driving around in their cars in the parades and just being really fun, gregarious, gentlemen. And but I hadn't really had a whole bunch of interaction with them lately. But they certainly embraced us here at this event. And
My experience consisted of driving by the buildings and wondering, what are they up to in there?
And my father and grandfather were Masons, and my father always said, if something happens to your mother and I, you will live at the Masonic Home. So we tried to keep them as healthy as we could because we wanted to stay with them. And there were days I thought it might be better. Well, thank you all for... Oh, we got one more?
were the 12 Wiley orphans good at football? Thanks to you, Mr. Garrison. You trained them and put them on the field and taught them how to run and catch and play. But apparently, after the first practice, Lane Garrison, my co-writer and great collaborator, came up to me very worried, running up, and my goodness, Ty, I don't know what you've done casting these guys. Not a damn one of them can play football. And I said, well, it's their first season, Lane. Of course they don't know how to play football, but you're going to make them play football, and they're going to figure it out. And by the way, back in 1938, there was no juking. There was no, it was a very gentlemanly, upright running sport. So it worked perfectly. But thanks to you and Coach TJ, who was our historical football coordinator, they came in and worked with these guys for how long? 3 weeks, boys? 2 weeks, nonstop, football camp. And they did a lot of their own stunts. These boys really pulled off a miracle. And many of them came from the area and had never acted before and got thrown into the lion's den with us. And I'm so proud of them all, and everybody should be super proud of these boys.
And these boys influenced my son, who's 3. He watched a screening of it, and now he pretends to be Weedy and Hardy Brown. He falls to the ground. He has no idea what football is. He throws the ball up in the air and goes, "I'm Hardy Brown," and falls to the ground all the time. But anyway, the first experience of what sports are like are now influenced by you all. So. And the camaraderie and the humanity and the brotherhood and, the family, he all saw that. He was very moved by, why is Hardy crying, but also happy and also angry? I don't understand. He was very trying to understand your character and basically only got the falling part. But, I know he got everything else too. So it's wonderful for a young boy to see that.
And
Absolutely.
The uniforms that y'all dug up for him were amazing. If anybody,
Juliana Hoffpower was the wardrobe designer, and she just
Texas girl.
you forget how primitive the helmets and the protection and all was. Then it just virtually didn't exist.
yeah, she did such a great job with all of that stuff.
Well, thank you all. You've been a great audience. Mitch, I think we have one more thing.
Mayor Price, I know you have a special presentation. First of all, one more round of applause for Vinessa, Ty, and Luke. Thank y'all. If we could have the producing crew, actors, and of course the Mites team come up on stage.
Hey, Levi
Because we're so proud of this film and because it's such a special debut for Fort Worth in the film industry, we wanted to present you a proclamation. I think I'm blocking everybody. Mitch has it here. I won't make it as formal as it actually is, but essentially it says it's a true story about Fort Worth and that it was filmed in the fall of 2019 and employed hundreds of locals and featured great locations throughout the city and our surrounding area. And we're very proud of 12 Mighty Orphans. And we wanted to declare today, June 7th, 12 Mighty Orphan Day in the city of Fort Worth.
Thank you all for coming today. We'll see you at the movies. Thank you.